I'm Murdo MacLeod. Let me tell you my story. I'm known as Muraki Innes Allen in Gaelic. I was born in 1887, in Ranish, in the parish of Lochs on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland. My father Angus MacLeod was born in 1841, in Ranish on the island of Lewis. My mother Gormedia Montgomery was born in 1855, also on the island of Lewis. My father, Angus, was the son of Alan MacLeod and Margaret MacLeod, of 2 Ranish. My father married his first wife Anne Nicholson, of 24 Ranish. The couple settled at 2 Ranish where my father became a cotter on the croft. My father's first wife Anne, died aged 24. They had one daughter, also called Anne. My father, Angus, lived with his second wife Gormedia Montgomery, at 29 Ranish. They had 7 children. My father's only daughter with his first wife, Anne Nicholson, was also called Anne. In 1901 Anne married Ewan MacDonald. He came from 38 Balallan. They emigrated to Patagonia to San Gregorio, Chile, South America. Estancia San Gregorio was a sheep farm founded in 1876 that quickly became the largest in the world. 2 of the ships that were used to transport the wool are now stranded on the beach at San Gregorio. Ewan died in Estancia San Gregorio in Chile, Patagonia. Ewan's wife Anne returned to Lewis with their daughter, Christina, after Ewan's death and settled in Stornoway. Christina, who was still living in Stornoway, is the widow of the late William John MacDonald, an island butcher. Angus had 7 brothers and sisters. Donald, born 1839. Mary, born 1883. Catherine, born 1884. Neil, born 1889, died in infancy. Neil, 1891 to 1898, died in childhood. And Margaret died in infancy. I married Morag, Marion Smith, on January 29, 1920, at age 33. That day was unforgettable. She was born in 1891. She was 28 years old when we married, 5 years younger than me. We had 5 beautiful children. 48 Ranish. I took over part of the divided croft at 43 Ranish. We settled at the portion numbered 48 Ranish and had 6 children. My first child was Gormelia. Next came Innes Ian. Then Neil and Kate Flora. And finally Eunice Beag. Garamal trained as a nurse. Angus Ian served and was a local councillor. Neil was a sailor. Kate Flora on her wedding day. Angus Begg served and was a whaler. Gormilier, Angus Ian, Neil, Kate Flora, Angus Beg. My wife and I were proud of our children and were happy when they gave us grandchildren who we loved. Goramil had 2 children with her husband Murdo John of 33 Ranish. They are Murdo John and Neil. Murdo John played the bagpipes, which made me happy as I also played the pipes before I lost a finger, which stopped my bagpipe playing. He was a left-handed player with left-handed bagpipes, which must have made it harder for him. Neil was a Highland dancer and loved the sword dance. He was good at it and never cut his toes on a sword. Murdo John had 2 lovely children, my great-grandchildren. Firstborn was Katrina. Next a boy. Kenneth. Likes to be called Kenny. Both of them there a twinkle in their father's eye. What lovely playful kids. Katrina and her husband, George Hastings, have 2 boys. They are Jonah and Taylor. Amazing and loving children. Neil and Sandy. They had 3 children. Beautiful Angela, who died in infancy, then came Alastair and Adrian. Both a credit to their parents. Alastair has 2 daughters with his wife Catherine Hughes. They are Jessica and Emma. Both wonderful girls. I will now pass you over to my wife Moore, who will tell you about her ancestors on the mother's side and some information about them.
My name is Moore MacLeod. I'll tell the next part of the story from my maternal side. I married Murdo MacLeod and we lived at 48 Ranish. Prior to that I lived in Luabost. As Murdo has said, we had 5 children. Gormilier, Innes Ian, Neely, Flory, and Innes Beg. Innes Ian had 4 children. Murdo, Marion, Alan and Fiona. Kate Flora was married to Alastair H. MacDonald. She had 6 children. Murdo, Angus, Alex Murdo, Morag, Chrisanne and Angie. Innes Beg had 4 daughters. Roseanne, Heather, Maureen and Joan. Neely had 3 children, Murdo, Morag and Catherine. My maternal line came from Betsy Moore. That's as far back as I can find out. My great-great-great-grandmother was Elizabeth Moore, born 1791, also known as Betsy Moore. She was a servant at the manse in Barvers. In 1811, in Barvers, she married a John Campbell from Harris. Elizabeth and John lived in Stornoway, where they had 2 of their 8 children. The couple moved to Lochs around 1813 and settled at 2 Old Graver at Tumman Warden. Elizabeth was a widow by the 1841 census. The first tenant of Old Graver at Tumman Warden was John Campbell from Harris, and the croft passed to his son, Murdo, born 1812. In the 1852 lotting, Murdo obtained 40 graver. John's son, Alexander, born 1818, was a cotter at 2 Old Graver. Roderick, born 1829, was a son of John Campbell and Elizabeth Moore, 2 Old Graver at Tumman Warden. In the 1852 lotting he moved with his brothers to 40 graver and later obtained 18 graver with his brother, Alexander. Roderick was on 18B graver and Alexander on 18A. In 1854 Roderick married Flora Mac Innes, of 8 Old Steimer Way. Roderick and Flora settled at 18B graver and they had 7 children. He and his brother Alexander were lost at sea in 1873, sailing from Stornoway. The boat floundered near Ranish. A gravestone was erected and sited on the island of St. Columba on Loch Erisort. There were 6 graver men drowned at Ranish, c. 1873. Before the vehicular road linking Park with Stornoway was completed in 1928, it was customary for groups of crofter fishermen from any one of the various villages of Park to take one or other of the local fishing boats and go to Stornoway for household provisions and shopping, and return in the evening. In about 1873, a group of 6 fishermen from Graver went to Stornoway for the day. They were Roderick Campbell, Alistair Campbell, brother of Roderick, Neil Carmichael, Donald Macmillan, Kenneth Nicholson, Johnny MacPhail. The boat left Stornoway as usual in the evening, but the wind was rising. As they were approaching Loch Grimishter at Clack na Gaoth Twarth, the wind was getting so strong that they lowered the sail and edged their way forward round the point with oars, but apparently the boat, which was heavy with provisions such as balls of meal and flour, foundered there. The first indication the people had that the boat was lost was when people from Ranish found balls of flour and other provisions on the foreshore. A search was organised, and all 6 bodies were recovered, and the upturned empty boat was found at the Brea near Stornoway. The victims of this tragedy were buried on St. Colm Island in Loch Resort. All of them were married, and between them they left about 26 children. Hi, I am Moore MacLeod. I'll continue with the story. Moore Marion MacLeod, born Smith. I entered the world on January 31, 1891, in 16, Lurbost, Lochs. I was the daughter of Angus Smith, who was born in 1860 at the same address, and Flora Smith, born MacDonald, whose birth took place on November 8, 1862, in 5 Kershaider, Lochs. I grew up with my siblings Farquhar and Catherine. On January 29, 1920, I married Murdo MacLeod, who hailed from 2, Ranish, Lochs. He was born on July 2, 1889. We were blessed with 5 children: Gormelia, Katie Flora, Angus John, Neil, and Angus, Aonghais Beag. I spent my later years in 48 Ranish. My life journey came to an end on September 20, 1968, when I passed away at the age of 77 in 48 Ranish. My mother, Flora Smith, born MacDonald, was born on November 8, 1862, in 5, Kershaider, Lochs. She was born to William MacDonald and Marion, also known as Sally MacLeod. Her father, William, hailed from the same address where Flora was born, having been born there himself in 1836. Her mother, Marion, shared her birthplace with her husband, being born in Kershaider in 1837. Flora grew up alongside 7 siblings: Christina, also referred to as Kirsty, Donald, John, Catherine, Jessie, Alexander, and Norman. In due course, Flora married Angus Smith, who was born in 1860 at 16, Lurbost. Together they welcomed 3 children into their family: Farquhar, Morag, Marion, and Catherine. Eventually, Flora's journey came to an end when she passed away on April 9, 1951, at the age of 88, in 48, Ranish, Lochs. My grandmother, Marion MacDonald, also known as Sally, was born in 1837 in Kershaider, to Hector MacLeod and Flora Campbell. Marion had 7 siblings. She married William MacDonald, who was born in 1836 in 5, Kershaider. Together they had 8 children. Marion passed away in 1909 at the age of 72. My great-grandmother, Flora MacLeod, was born around the year 1811 in 2 Old Graver, Lochs, to John Campbell and Elizabeth Campbell, born Moore. On March 10, 1836, Flora married Hector MacLeod, who was born on June 19, 1814, in Kershaider. Together they had 8 children. Flora MacLeod passed away at the age of 44 on December 6, 1855. in 11, Harbost, South Lochs. My great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth Campbell, born Moore and known as Betsy Moore, was welcomed into the world in 1782. She married John Campbell. Church records show that they married in Barvers. Betsy was a servant in the church manse at Barvers. John was a fisherman from Maravig. They lived in 2 Old Graver in Manuaden. After a long life, Elizabeth passed away at the age of 100 in 1882. Betsy Moore lost 4 of her family to the boat tragedy at Ranish Point, and they are buried at Ellencallum, Chile, otherwise known as St. Columbia's Island. It's thought that Betsy will also be buried there. The other places where she might be buried are Crosspost or Graffit cemeteries. That completes this family history. Going back through time, here are my mother's mothers. Flora MacDonald, Marion Smith, Flora Campbell, and Elizabeth Campbell, whose maiden name was Betsy Moore. I hope you have enjoyed this video. From Moore and Murdo, Ranish.